وطبت مكانا وطبت مكانا.
Welcome back to the Morning Rush on ITV Networks, and the time is now 7:15. As promised, we're joined in studio by Anas Al-Hamati. He's the lead negotiator for the Gift of the Givers in Yemen, and he'll be talking to us just about what it takes to be a negotiator in that region and a little bit more about what his job actually entails. Anas, welcome to the Morning Rush on ITV Networks. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, just let's start by just telling the viewers exactly what your job is and what it entails.
I am the manager of Gift of the Givers office in Yemen, in Republic of Yemen.
And you have been involved in negotiating for the release of some South Africans who were kidnapped in Yemen in 2013 in May, Pierre and Yolande Korki. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you first came to learn about that case and how you then made contact and started negotiating for the release?
First when I heard in May 2013 there is 2 South African was kidnapped in Yemen. Especially because I know there is no South African embassy in Yemen, and Gift of the Givers have a huge profile to help thousands of families inside Yemen, and we have a good relationship with different tribes around the Yemen. That's why I contacted Dr. Suleiman. I informed him that I can involve with this case. It's just an event for me to reply what Gift of the Givers and South Africa doing for Yemen.
And you mentioned that, of course, the Gift of the Givers has offices in Yemen, and the South African government does not have an embassy in that country. And you were able to make some headway in negotiating with the people who had kidnapped the Korkis, and to an extent you were able to make further progress than perhaps what the government could. In fact, it led to the release of Yolande Korki in January. Just talk to us about what happened in January 2014 and how Yolande was released.
Yolande was released after a long time. Before that, we spent a few months in search to find any link to start a negotiation. Negotiation start for a few months, and 10th of January. This is the result of our efforts for a few months to follow where is Yolande and how we can take Yolande out. We take Yolande out unconditionally. Then I send Yolande to South Africa and restart to negotiate to release her husband Pierre Korki.
And can you just tell our viewers exactly what the security situation is like for tourists in Yemen, but specifically who it was that kidnapped the Korkis and who you were negotiating with?
Korki kidnapped by Al-Qaeda militant group because they find in like these cases financial resources to support their operations. That's why it was very hard and very dangerous negotiation.
And then, of course, after Yolande Korki was released in January 2014, the negotiations then got underway. But for some time, there was silence as in the bid to free Pierre Korki from the same captors. And I think it was about 8 or 9 months after Yolande was released that there was a development. And it looked as if Pierre Korki was going to be released. But of course, there was that operation by the United States Special Forces. Just take us through what was happening behind the scenes by the Gift of the Givers and ultimately how it ended.
After we take Yolande out, we start PA negotiation for PA for 11 months, for 11 months. In the last moments in December, everything was ready to take Pierre out. Even I contact with the ambassador of South Africa in Riyadh, and I tell him that to arrange passport for Pierre Korki to take him out out Yemen directly from Aden province. In 5 of January, in 5 of December, everything was ready to take Pierre out. But unfortunately, before that, a few hours was enough to take him out. But unfortunately, in the last moments, the American operation destroyed everything.
That was definitely a sad outcome, an unfortunate outcome to those negotiations, which seem to have been making significant headway there. But Anas, I think that you're also in a position to talk to us just a little bit about hostage negotiations and another case which is developing now, not in Yemen but in Mali, where Stephen McGowan, another South African, is currently being held. I understand that you've got some information about the case. Just tell us about the nature of that specific case and then what would happen from here.
It's not easy negotiation with militant group. First day, the second day when I arrived to South Africa, I directly met Muhammad Yahya Diko, his Gift of the Givers negotiator in Mali. I tried to summarize and explain all my idea in negotiation because I know the kidnappers have the same ideology in Mali or in Yemen.
And that's the space that you try and work in to try and find some of that common ground to actually negotiate with the captors. And you're able to talk just about the significance of having a group such as the Gift of the Givers in areas where there's abject poverty, but also in areas where there's some form of threat to people moving through the area. Well, what would you say was the advantage of being affiliated to Gift of the Givers in Yemen specifically while you were doing the negotiations?
Negotiations, it's very hard. It takes a long time because it's peaceful way. When we talk about peaceful way, we don't talk about ransom money. No, we release Yolandi unconditionally. It takes a long time if you try to negotiate slowly to take your hostage out.
And Anas, I want you to just talk about the situation in Yemen right now. This morning, we ran a report that Saudi ground forces are now going over the north border in Yemen, and they're currently battling Houthi rebels there. And of course, we know that the Arab-backed coalition is trying to secure that border and make sure that the fighting subsides. But of course, there have been airstrikes by Saudi Arabia in Yemen over the last few months. So, but as this is happening, there's obviously a huge security situation, but this is leading to a desperate humanitarian situation. This is something that Gift of the Givers knows well, as it provides relief to many different countries, and it's been in the worst situations. For those who don't know, tell us, what is the situation in Yemen like at the moment?
The situation in Yemen is very serious at the moment because more than 10 areas in direct fighting in Yemen, and more than 10 provinces around the Yemen. All ports are destroyed, all airports are destroyed, no universities, no schools, everything, the life is stopped, no electricity, no clean water, no even water. Every day, 100 of people injury and like them killed every day. They don't want, there is no any invent to peaceful solution in Yemen because they all groups, they try to find a victory.
Understand, and you mentioned that every day there are hundreds of people that are injured there, and the airports and ports have been destroyed, universities aren't open. Can you just talk to us about the scale of destruction? Are we seeing continuous fighting across the country every day, or is it sporadic fighting that's broken up by times of peace or quiet?
Every day there is a fighting around the Yemen country, because they announced for the ceasefire for 3 times, but it's fall down directly because all the groups that try to find the victory, you know, at the current situation in Yemen, 80% from Yemeni people, they need urgent aid because all jobs are stopped at the moment.
And 80% of the population relying on relief aid at the moment. We know that the Gift of the Givers is active in Yemen and is providing some humanitarian relief. What exactly is the organization doing there?
We are facing a hunger crisis first. We provide the food process for urgent cases in Yemen. Also, we provide the clean water for so many areas in Yemen.
And that water, is it brought into the country, or are you taking it from boreholes?
We take it from inside by country by tanks. Also, we provide help for orphan care centers, also for the prisons, because, you know, can you imagine that there's inside the prison they don't find anything to eat at this moment?
Certainly is a very desperate situation, and I think one of the features of situations such as these, where humanitarian crisis unfolds as a result of a conflict in that country, is that it's very difficult to move some humanitarian relief aid into the country, specifically at the border. What has the situation been like with trying to get that water over the border, bringing that medicine, the food that's being donated into Yemen? Have you been able to get the food into the country easily?
From outside Yemen, unfortunately, we can't. From 5 months, all ports are destroyed. We can't receive anything in Yemen office. We are ready here to send on Gift of the Giver City office here. We are ready to send foods and blankets to Yemen, but unfortunately we can't, and medicine, but we can't receive it in Yemen. We're waiting for any safe way to take our stuff to inside Yemen.
So how have you been doing it currently?
We try to purchase some foods from inside Yemen, but in the same time it's very expensive inside Yemen.
I understand. And then, of course, Gift of the Givers, from all the great work that it is doing in that country, I'm sure it's not enough. There must be a lot of other organizations. Which organizations are operating there?
There is a United Nations organizations and Red Cross at the same times. But Red Cross, yesterday they closed their office in Adam because it's an attack. It's a very hard situation for a humanitarian job inside Yemen, because there is no guarantee for safety for your team. This is just one of all what challenge we have. We have so many challenges for humanitarian work inside Yemen.
And then just the last one on the Yemeni situation and what's happening there at the moment. Big focus has been on the children in that country and the people that are not involved in the fighting. A lot of people concerned, number one, because the schools have been affected by the violence, and because there's no guarantee of safe movement across the country. Can you just talk about the women and children specifically, and those that are not involved in the fighting?
It's very hard. Even I told you there is a children involved in the fighting at the moment inside Yemen. The militants group, they use the children and in the fighting. It's very hard to see that, because there is no schools, no universities. They use the children and kids in this fighting. It's very hard to see that inside Yemen. Unfortunately, the whole situation in Yemen is very bad. So we have now 20,000 refugees in Somalia and Djibouti, and more than 1 million IDPs inside Yemen.
You're saying there's 20,000 refugees in Somalia alone?
In Somalia and Djibouti.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that there are more than 1,000 IDPs. What exactly is that?
1 million IDP inside Yemen, because there is some areas inside Yemen, in the fighting area, the identity displacement people, they move to another areas to find a safe place.
All right, then just before we go, Anas, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your experience in South Africa. I know that you came down to South Africa last week, if I'm not mistaken, and you were able to meet with Yolande Korke, quite an emotional meeting. And of course, you said that you met with the Gift of the Givers negotiator from Mali, who is also in South Africa at the moment. What has your experience been like here, and especially meeting with the headquarters, with the head of the organization, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, as well?
Of course, I was very happy when I see Yolandi in Bloemfontein. She returned to her normal life, and she tried to rebuild her life again with family. I feel that the result of our efforts for more than 1 year, I see the benefit. I was very happy to see Yolandi again.
Well, that is Anas Al-Hamati joining us on the Morning Rush on ITV Networks, talking to us about his work as a negotiator in Yemen, specifically saying that it's become a crisis situation as the fighting between militant groups and the Saudi forces continues there. Also saying that there are more than 1 million people that have been internally displaced in that country, more than 20,000 people that have crossed the border in search of some safety in Somalia. And then also talking to us a little bit about the negotiations and the failed attempt to get Pierre Korki out of the country, and due to a raid at the last minute by United States Special Forces. Well, the time is now 7:30, and we're going to the news. We'll be back after this.